So destructive. And that's what was context. He's talking about all the manifestation gifts, tongue, prophecy, healings. In chapter 13 is the love chapter. Love is patient, love is kind. And then he gets into 13 or 14, and he's talking about those that are things that are destructive, where they were using the gifts to disrupt. So like he talks about speaking in tongues, he says, I would rather you speak one word of understanding than 10,000 words in an unknown tongue. It was distracting. He said people come in that are lost, they don't understand. What was happening with the women is in the church at that point in time, early in the first century, is they were taking leadership roles that they were not ordained to give, or to be. They were not ordained to use. Sorry, to serve in. And so Paul was calling them down at Corinth because they were leading when they weren't supposed to. So that's why I'm saying y'all don't even talk, because they were drawing attention to himself. He also talks about having braided hair and wearing makeup and dangly earrings. Not that that's even sinful, because what he was saying was it's drawing attention to you instead of to the Word of God. And that's what the context is. You can go read. You read those 3 chapters together, because it's all talking about the gifts that God has given us. What's the purpose of the gift? The purpose of the gift is to manifest, to glorify God and edify the believer. They were using the gift to do what? Draw attention to themselves. And that's, when you start getting into the speaking in tongues and prophecy and healings, what's the purpose? These guys that are saying they have the gift of healing, then, all right, Slick, go to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta and do work. If you truly have the gift of healing. Well, no, it's only manifested in a worship service when, a bunch of people are there hooting and hollering. Really, do you have a gift of healing then? So that's where he comes out with that. So again, it's turned into a legalism thing in the church that, and I vividly remember I had a student in my youth ministry. She was like, I need to ask something in conference. What do I need to do? I said, I guess you need to ask your dad and have your dad ask the question. So in the middle of the service, you turned around to her dad, or in the conference, turned around to her dad and said, would you ask about, whatever we needed for the youth ministry? Because she wasn't allowed to speak in church. So that's where he says, you teach. That to me, that's the core of what Jesus is trying to get across. And know that, because when we go into the passage this morning we're looking at, he's going to take that then to the people. He goes on to say this, Mark recounts, he says in verse 8, he said, you leave the commandment of God and hold to the tradition of men. And he gives an example, and I think it's a very poignant example. He said to them, you have a fine way of rejecting the commandment of God in order to establish your tradition. And then he gives an example, his Old Testament example. He says, for Moses said, honor your father and mother. That's like 10 commandments. Jesus is like foundational teaching. Honor your father and mother. And he says, and whoever reviles father or mother must surely die. That was Old Testament law. It's interesting. You look at Old Testament law, there was a lot of, if you do this, you die. Like, stone them. Like, if they disrespect their mother and father, stone them to death. They're not worthy to live, right? Commit adultery, stone them, okay? So he says, you have this, God has said, Moses had said, honor your father and mother, but you say, whoever reviles his mother or father must die. But I say to you, if a man tells his father and mother, whatever would be gained, Corban, that means given to God, and you no longer permit him to do anything for his father, thus making void the word of God by your tradition that you have handed down, and many such things that you do. Here's the way this works. I get this pen, and I say, okay, this pen is dedicated to God. All right, now the pen. Oh, this pen's dedicated to God, Mom. I can't give it. I have millions of dollars. My mom is old and needs to go to the nursing home, but I've dedicated all that money to God. My mom's stay in a nursing home. Tell her, Mom, I can't. Why? Money is dedicated to God. That's what the Pharisees were doing. They were dedicating. They were saying they were dedicating their stuff to God, but Jesus knew their heart. Was it really dedicated to God? No. They were just using that law as an excuse to not take care of their parents. And he says, what the law says is you ought to die. That's what you talked about a minute ago about how Jesus called them vipers. Like he does not pull punches with the Pharisees. Why? Because he knows their hearts are corrupt. What's that verse? This people honors me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. You got a lot of people in our culture, in our day and age, who are religious, who don't follow after God. I love one of my favorite conversations, and me and my father-in-law don't talk about the Bible anymore because I finally ripped him. He said, man, we were talking, and the church he was coming out of and the influence he was facing. I love my father-in-law. I'm not dogging him, nor this is gossip. We talk about it. But he was talking about how bad it was that this young couple was living together and how it was a sin. And I was like, oh, yeah, man, absolutely it's a sin. He said, man, if they don't get right with Jesus, they're going to go to hell. And I said, yeah, that's absolutely right. I said, and if you don't get right with Jesus, you're going to go to hell too. And so what are you talking about? I said, you speed. What do you mean? I said, you passed me on the bypass the other day. I was doing 60. You blew past me on the bypass. You had to be doing 70. And he's like, well, that's not sinful. I said, yeah, it is. The Bible says in Romans 13, you're to obey the laws of the land. The laws have been given to you, and they're ordained of God. If you reject the law, you reject God. That's what it says. I said, you're breaking the law. He's like, well, it's not as bad. Oh, really? And that's what legalist folks will do. That's what legalism will do. Because I've been passed on more than one occasion by members. And again, I'm just using Holy Ground as an example. I could pick any church because everybody Tyus speeds. Everybody in this room speeds. True or false? Everybody speeds. We're not going to get self-righteous. It's just a real easy thing for me. If people want to say, well, you know, I don't do drugs, or I don't do alcohol, I don't kill people. You speed. God gave the law. What are we supposed to do? We're supposed to obey the law. If we don't, we're sinning. And so he just went on this tirade about that it was not the same. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Now, there's different consequences for different sins. If you continue to do drugs or alcohol and you don't quit, what is it eventually going to do? It'll kill you. Reality is, if you continue to speed, there's a reason why 55 or 45 were given on these roads. Because Highway Patrol or somebody has a parameter set that at this place you go this speed because it's safer. You can go 65 on a 4-lane out here on 27, but you better not do 65 on this road. What happens if you do 65 on this road? And I know y'all have tried it, so I know. But there are plenty of people that have done it before, and what have they done? Some of them have died. So yeah, the consequences are different. If you continue to live together and you're